Welcome to my garage and thank you for joining me. Today is all about establishing a baseline, so how are we going to do that? The rules, we're going to take 8 shots with each club, starting with the wedges, and from there, take 5 of the best shots relative to the group as a whole. The goal today is not to be perfect, but to be as consistent as possible to know how to best move forward with any adjustments I'll be making here at the beginning of the season. I'll be using the 2024 Callaway Chrome Tour golf ball. Let's dive in. So after having an opportunity to dig through the data, boil things down to the 5 best shots for each group, the theme for this session and for this video is really going to be a big picture focus to ultimately narrow things down to make small changes in each of the sections of the bag. And when I had an opportunity to really zoom out and see all of the shots together aggregated into each of the best sets for each club, I could really start to see some changes throughout the bag which were really in line with certain equipment elements that really changed from club to club or from set to set. So with that in mind, I think ultimately what makes the most sense is as I go through this information and as I hit some shots here, is to break each of the sets up in those individual categories. So we're gonna look at the wedges first, followed by the pitching wedge through the 8-iron, the 7-iron through the 4-iron, and then we're gonna look at the top of the bag. So looking at things first for the wedges, I think if I had to sum it up in one word, the word would be predictable. And this is kind of the word I would apply to most of the irons in my bag as a whole. Predictable in the sense of the direction, because the miss is almost entirely on one side of the aim line, and predictable in the sense of strike, because I tend to have a little bit of inconsistency or know the situations that are ultimately going to lead to an inconsistent strike. So as we look into the data and really kind of boil down the numbers, we can see that in the progression from a directional control standpoint. It's as we go up from the 58 to the 54, the miss continues to be longer and more to the left, and then even more so going into the 50 degree. The strike as well, and I'm digging more maybe into the inconsistency from a spin standpoint. A lot of variation really on how the ball is flying through the air. And I can really feel that in how I'm hitting it. And that's through turf interaction or ultimately like where I'm hitting the ball on the club face itself. For me personally, I'm a higher ball hitter to start with. And with these shafts is what it feels like to me. It exaggerates that elevated shot even more so. And getting a little nitpicky as well, but just kind of in this big picture focus. Distance gapping is going to be very important to really kind of fine tune as I go throughout these adjustments that I'll be making. Now, as we look at the numbers, you can really see what I was talking about beforehand in terms of that separation from the wedges and then into the lower part of the irons here, where that left miss that was continuing to progress further left as we went up through the wedges really kind of reset a little bit closer back to center line with the pitching wedge, and then it started progressing on its own out into the left as we got up into the 8-iron from there. From a strike consistency standpoint, I would say I improved from the wedges, so I was happy to see that. And throughout much of the irons, like I had talked about, these are very predictable. I know what the miss is ultimately going to be. I know where to aim to be safe when I am trying to attack pins or am going at the green. But that directional control and or the lack thereof is ultimately something I want to address. And now moving on to the next part of the bag, we again see almost another phase change when it comes to the information that we're getting out of these clubs. Much larger miss area overall throughout each of the club as we continue along the bag. And even though we're getting into the longer clubs, and that's somewhat expected, the types of misses that I was experiencing are vastly different than what I was having at the lower end of the bag. I was feeling a lot more inconsistency from a strike control standpoint. The directional control aspect was significantly worse, especially in the 5-iron in particular, which I will be interested to see if there is something specifically wrong with that, because in that case, it did take me more than 8 shots to even get 5 shots that were tolerable to use for the data set. So as we look into the information and we start digging into these numbers a little bit further, we can still see trending towards that left miss. However, some improvement towards center line as we got up towards the 4-iron there. So again, I think the biggest takeaway from this grouping is directional control still being a problem, the inconsistent strike leading to that lack of consistency, again, with the directional control. And then more so than in the lower part of the bag, problems with the distance gapping in between the individual clubs, which, like I talked about before, will be something that does get addressed at a larger scale across the entire bag. Getting into the top of the bag, this is by far for me one of the weakest parts of my game. I do feel like every single time I get one of those clubs in my hand, speaking the driver or even the 3-wood specifically, I'm making a completely different golf swing, or I have a completely different mindset about that shot than I do having an iron in my hands. So I think that's something as a whole that can be addressed, and whether that's going to be swing weight, whether that's going to be shaft selection, club length, or whatever it might be as I get into the beginning of the season here. But it's something, as you can see with the information, having a two-way miss at multiple clubs at the furthest distance in the bag is probably not conducive to putting up better numbers and then ultimately improving your score. So as we look into the information, with the 2-iron specifically, in keeping with a lot of the irons previously in the set, directional control continues to be an issue. I was, however, seeing a little bit more consistency in terms of the overall left and right miss that I was experiencing. However, what came into play was a lack of efficiency or a lack of consistency in the distance control, more so than any of the other irons that I had earlier on in this set. Now, looking at the 3-wood, I would say from a distance consistency standpoint was easily the best of the three. I was able to get the club face on the ball pretty much in the same way, at the same speed, with similar efficiency every single time. However, I was still fighting that two-way miss. I was still experiencing driver-like spin numbers with this 3-wood off the tee, which is great, and I could probably almost do without a driver, just given what these numbers look like in comparison to one another. However, it's something that I want to be able to use as a tool on the course and be able to chase some of those longer holes, ultimately giving myself more opportunities to put up some lower scores on those longer holes themselves. Moving into the driver, again, inefficiency was pretty rampant throughout. I was all over the club face. I was working super hard every single swing to just hopefully keep it on property, and that was resulting still in a two-way miss that I really had no idea of where it was going. So going forward, I think there's a lot of stuff that I can address really through the entire bag as a whole, and hopefully make some changes. And so that's it. I want to thank you for tuning in to my first video on YouTube. This has been something I've been wanting to do for a while. Tinkering around with clubs, messing around with my game is something I've always been interested in a long time. I'm super excited to be taking you on this journey with me. I hope you can learn something from what I'm digging into with my own individual bag, and whether that's you going out and renting a bay, or if you have your own simulator and doing a whole bag testing yourself to see what parts of your game really need that attention, or even just knowing that nagging spot in your bag that you're always messing up, and how we can maybe work through those problems together to either fix it through some simple changes that we can do at home in maybe your own golf shop or the workbench that you have already set up. So stay tuned. I've got a lot of videos coming, and I hope to see you soon.